Hey, Bill!
There you go. Just speak about that far away. You don't need to.
Yes, boss. I could give a little story about every one of you here. It goes back 50, 60 years, a couple of you, really. But I'm not going to do that. I'm going to do, I got to give a couple of mentions to Alex, who put on this speaker system. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I see a couple of people that need mentioning here, but mainly Marissa and her mother, Linda. She did the whole deal there. And it's been incredible. But I want to talk about, I could talk all night, but I'm going to talk on one 12-hour period of my life. It was exactly this day, June 18th, 1960. Not 61 when we married, 60. School's out. I drove my little Austin Healey up to Berkeley. Barely got there at dark. And a friend told me, oh, you can go see these fraternity houses. The boys are all gone for $30 a month. I did. And next morning I got up early and pre-enrolled a little bit in an Asian Studies course. And got to the class just a little bit late. The class was full of all these wonderful Asian, mostly boys, and I got into the back row, and somebody else was later than I was. A girl. She came into this almost all male, almost all Asian students, about 50 of us. And she looks around, one round eye, way in the back end. She comes and sits by me. My lucky day. The professor was late. Thank you, Dr. Parsons. He was one of the great professors. And he got there, and by the time I'd got to talk to Carol a little bit. And we discussed a couple of things, maybe even doing lunch after this thing. Now I'm pretty fast in those days. And, but not only that, at lunch, I talked to her, now he's a pretty famous professor. Why don't you, I'm taking the seminars in the afternoon. Why don't you drop your English seminars and take this seminar with me? She said, okay. But something else was coming on here. She asked me for dinner that night. I'd known her 4 hours. I didn't know at the time. But Betty McGonigal at that time had said, bring a nice Stanford boy, a Berkeley boy home. And yeah, okay, maybe you said Berkeley grad. Oh, 2 boys. And anyway, Carol had this objective and did it. Invited me. I fell on Don Gray on the Delta Sig house, came with me. We went to the house, and again, barely met her, but I met these 2 other incredibly smart Stanford girls, Betty and Pam. Pam were something, and they were preparing a nice dinner. I had 1 bottle of wine in my little car. It was you would somebody remember, silver satin, which is 22% alcohol. So I brought that out. That was kind of fun. And they did a hibachi chicken, and we had such a good time. And Carol and I made plans to go on the next day, meet in class, go to seminars. And I told her, I broke down and said, I'm a lucky guy. I just got a check for back pay from GI Bill, over $200. That's a lot of money. And I said, I don't know the Bay Area at all. I'd never been across the bridge. So I said, if you're willing, and she's a Bay Area girl, she knows the city. I had to learn it's not Frisco, it's the city. And I said, I want to hear the best of San Francisco. I want to see it. Restaurants I'd heard of, never even knew where they were. And she agreed to be my date and tour guide. And for the next 2 weeks, that's Every night after class, we would meet, go on a picnic, and go to one of these places. Places you've all been, but I'd never had. And one of the last ones was a place called Mark Hopkins and the Top of the Mark. And of course, I show up in my typical short sleeve shirt, and they have to provide me a tie and a jacket. I was pretty backward. But Carol introduced me, and after about 2 weeks to the day, I did a silly thing. I asked her to marry me. And she did a silly thing. She said yes. And that we were very smart grad students. We said, but you should always make sure this is not an impulse. We waited, and we decided to wait 1 year. So exactly 1 year after we met on June 18th, we married on June 18th.
Whoa.
Today,
Wow.
50 years later.
That's awesome. All right.
That's the story of a most famous 12 hours in my life. And I met a wonderful girl. And all of you people, every one of you, we know her, she knows. I've got this wonderful daughter-in-law who had a lot to do with all this. And the best thing this daughter-in-law's done is produce me 2 grandsons. See for yourself, 2 of the most beautiful kids in the world. That's my little story. And anybody else, if you want to talk and come up and say a word, you're welcome to do it. Betty?